The other thing too is, it's not the best intro, but whatever. There are some books. Now, Cynthia and I, we came here a few days ago from Montreal, but we can only carry so many books. Instead of carrying everything in like several suitcases, what we did is we printed out these little forms. So if people would like to order signed copies of the Untold History of Canada books, or the Clash of Two Americas books, or Cynthia's The Empire in Which the Black Sun Never Sets, or Breaking Free of China Psyops, we got a whole room in our house stacked with these things. You can just like fill up whatever you want, and we'll send it to you. That's housekeeping stuff. Thank you all for coming. Really, really excited. The whole COVID weirdness really made it difficult for Cynthia and myself to interface with real human beings in real physical space-time. So Zoom was a bit of a blessing and a curse in some ways, because on the one hand, I mean, it was part of the atomization, as we all know, the digitization of society, of culture, right? That sucks. But on the other hand, we did meet all of a sudden people from all parts of the world who were all of a sudden participating in our meetings online, from Peru to Colombia to Asia, Africa, South Africa, Australia, and beyond. So that's really great in that sense. But now that we're actually back in reality, we had a chance to go to Europe a little bit, where we spoke at some freedom events, and this is our first real event in Canada. And I mentioned in the opening emails to a lot of people here that we've done a few videos, and I asked people to watch a 9-minute video clip. So I'm just curious, can I get a show of hands? Who has watched the previous 9-minute video clip? All right, I got a few here, right? Who was our real enemy? Russia, China, or something else? All right, so I'm getting about 50-50. Do you think we should play that 9-minute video clip before playing our new one?
Ask the audience what they think.
Okay, so we've been working now for about a year with a filmmaker named Jason Dahl. He's a talent. And I myself was studying film animation, documentary making when I was a student. And then I got into politics. I kind of let that fall by the wayside, but I've always had a desire to turn these ideas geopolitically into art, into multimedia. But every time we've tried, we just didn't find people who had the talent to do the work, right? To actually produce high quality productions until the Freedom Convoy happened, and we were there in Ottawa, being inspired, where we were encountering something that I didn't think any Canadian was capable. I didn't think Canada could do what we did, as far as organizing the way that we did in February of 2021. And in the process of just talking to a lot of people on the ground, we met Jason Dahl, and we've been working with him, making documentaries with us. We're doing currently a series to try to help people focus, because right now, with the whole financial system coming down, there's a controlled demolition of the system happening as we speak. It is tied to the war drive. I'm going to show a couple of short images here, but I think everyone, if you're here, you kind of know that in some degree. This is not an accident. There's a controlled long-term plan. But now that there is, it's very difficult for people to ignore the collapse, as they had when things were apparently stable, right? There was an ability to hold on to the illusion that somehow things could continue the way that they had in the 90s, in the 2000s, right? And they could just have a gradual, forever consumerism of blah that could just go on forever. That's really hard to hold on to. The system is collapsing. We see it breaking apart in many, many different points. There's geopolitical hotspots that are blowing up that are, right now, obviously, Ukraine is a big one. Taiwan is a hotspot that's currently looking to be the new Ukraine of the Pacific. We have Japan also that has brought in a NATO liaison office. So we have a NATO liaison office being brought in now to Tokyo. That is clearly part of this expansion of NATO from an Atlantic treaty to a Pacific and Atlantic global police force. The Japanese Constitution has been changed to now, for the first time since World War II, allow for acts of aggressive war in defense of allies, whatever the hell that is. While the Japanese have been a colonized country under the control of a U.S. military-industrial complex since World War II. Even right now, there's 50,000 U.S. troops stationed in Okinawa and broader southern Japan, right? So Japan has never it's never been permitted to become a sovereign country. South Korea has 28,000 U.S. troops stationed there. There's some of the biggest bio-warfare facilities run by the Pentagon in South Korea. That's also part of what is looking to be, or at least certain psychopaths want South Korea to be a part of this broader Quad encirclement of China as part of what we're going to see some images of. Now, The good part of a crisis is it does force people to confront reality, and when they confront reality, their creative energy and passion can be put towards what we saw with the Freedom Convoy is one small example of something humans have done from every time throughout history where a crisis is hit, right? And that is problem solved in a way that actually creates new systems that can better assure the survival of ourselves and our children, our nations and humanity. That's the good thing. The bad thing, though, is that people are also much more susceptible to fear. And when they're in a fear state, because the future is all of a sudden a lot less certain for a lot of people, the mind loses its ability to hold on to judgment of truth. All of a sudden, you're much more inclined to accept without thinking too deeply. You're inclined to accept an enemy image, whether it's Venezuela or Russia or China or whatever. There's a lot of effort to try to cause people to lose focus and give their hate and fear to something which is not causal as far as our problems are concerned. Or that even might be playing into what I'm about to show, which is the current U.S. military alignment, U.S. military bases spread out over the world currently. I think everyone has seen this image, right? You got these different memes online, of course, Russia wants World War III. Why do they put their nation so close to our military bases? Same thing can be said for China. Now, there's last time I checked, 860 U.S. military bases spread out outside of the U.S. border itself. Since 1990, there's been about 200 countries that have suffered some form of U.S. military intervention. For the last 80 years, we have heads of states who have stood up against the IMF, the World Bank, who have gotten killed, whether it was Salvador Allende in Chile or whether it was Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana. I mean, it's a long list. Anybody can just Google heads of state internationally who got killed or overthrown by CIA coups. It's a big list. Compare that to do a little exercise over the same time frame of how many countries got militarily intervened upon or their leaders assassinated by Iran. Try India, try China, try Russia. It's going to be a lot smaller, if not non-existent. But yet these are the people who we're being told are the source of our anger and fear that we should hate. Now, what's happening? Obviously, Cynthia and myself, we've produced a lot of video content, literary content, and one of the themes that we've always been trying to bring to bear is this idea that one needs to judge systems top down as well as bottom up. You can't just do top down and you can't just do bottom up. You have to look at both at the same time as dynamic systems. But the thing about systems is that you could either conceptualize a system, whether it's a human being, we're all systems, right? What do people think of as a system? If I were to ask you, what does a system mean if you were to loosely define a system? What does that mean? Anything.
Interconnected parts that influence each other.
Interconnected parts that influence each other. That's good. Would you say
Operation.
That has a method of operation within it, an internal logic around which the parts move together
for a purpose?
For a purpose. Everybody agree with those three things? There's a purpose for the system to have many parts moving together in a
Organism.
yeah, it could be seen as an organism.
Control.
There's a control factor to it, of course, yeah. So I think these are all good. These are all very good definitions. And the question then is, well, what is the purpose of the system? And is the system, can we all conceptualize ourselves as systems, as a body, right? And as a group in a room, we consider ourselves as a unit, right? A bunch of people here together, moving parts for a purpose, right? Not all necessarily in total agreement, but the point is we're all here for a purpose. We're part of a nation, we're part of a human species. These are all systems within systems, and each one can be seen as both a unit or also as a part of a broader system. So that's a fact of life. Interesting thing. Then the question is, are we closed systems or open systems? Is each of us as units completely cut off as a closed system, unaffected biologically from everything around? Let's say me. I'm me, so I'll talk about me. Am I disaffected biologically from all of your systems, or is there influence?
Yes.
There's influence on physical levels, right? We're all breathing the same air. We have electromagnetic fields that are very subtle, but also very real, that we all emit, right? That are all having certain subtle influences. My machinery here, my computer as a system, an electric system, is also having effects. I don't know whether it's good or bad, but we're swimming in a sea of invisible energy, but it's real. Also, yeah, chemical. Also idea based, right? I'm obviously changing my thoughts based upon my interaction with you guys on a metaphysical idea. So that's it. So our art there, we can say that our systems are not closed systems, right? We're all being influenced by everybody around us. And the Earth is part of a system of the galaxy, right? And the weather patterns that affect us, the magnetic fields, are being affected here by the sun, what the sun is doing with its own magnetic field cycles of 11 years. And the sun is being affected by what's going on in the galaxy, in the center of the galaxy, which is part of the broader Milky Way. So we all have these systems within systems influencing on so many levels. And when you're dealing with politics, Cynthia and I have been really working to try to get people to think about politics and the struggle for human history around whether or not human beings are closed or open systems. That's one tool. There's many other tools to look at it, but that's one useful way to exercise evaluating history. And history also is not just about the past, but it's also about the future. And in that sense, history is all about whether or not people's idea of what the future was worked or didn't, whether our ideas of what the future should be, the purpose we thought humanity should have, was advanced, succeeded, or failed, was subverted, for good or for bad. So history is about different competing ideas of the future that did or did not happen to varying degrees. And looking at it that way gives us a lot more lessons into how to interpret and navigate through the current present moment in history that we're living through, because there will be people looking back upon us in the future, thinking of us as having been either tragic or non-tragic, right? Having changed in accordance with our better selves or given into our fear or hate. And they will judge us as we judge those who chose to do nothing when the Nazi machine was rising in Germany, right? And all of a sudden people were disappearing from your block. And, too many people chose to do nothing because their personal lives weren't immediately affected. And then a disaster happened, which is totally foreseeable. So today, one thing that we're pointing out, well, here, Guterres, the head of the Secretary General of the UN, recently made some remarks about, in 2021, about his ideas, concerns about the two different competing ideas of systems, purpose, and design that are affecting things like quantum computing, AI, finance. And he says in this quote, I find it a useful quote as a starting point, that I fear our world is creeping towards two different sets of economic, trade, financial, and technology rules, two divergent approaches in the development of artificial intelligence, and ultimately two different military and geopolitical strategies. This is a recipe for trouble. It would be far less predictable and far more dangerous than the Cold War. I think we all generally would agree that the world today is in many ways more dangerous than the Cold War. You have open discussions happening from people who are very high up in the US military chain of command, talking about the need to have a war with China by 2025. That's an open discussion happening. You have President Biden himself literally saying not only that the US would militarily support Taiwan under any context of Chinese invasion of Taiwan, but that would be also World War III. Same thing for Russia. Biden, the current president, has called for the overthrow of Putin, a sitting elected head of state, saying that he should be overthrown. That's wild that you have a sitting president speaking this way, but also action from a whole military-industrial complex that is building up this whole war system. So when Guterres says that, what is he talking about? And the 2 points of open system, closed system, I just want people to really have this firmly in their minds, is that if you think about an open system in short, it is a non-zero-sum system. Right? Anybody know what zero-sum means? Who has an idea of a zero-sum system?
There's only so much and
One winner, one loser.
yeah, there's all.
One winner, one loser, yeah. Yeah. There's only so much to go around. And pie is always going to get smaller, right? So if you always have more people eating who need food, the pie is always going to get smaller because it's a fixed quantity of pie. You're always going to get more tension in time as people fight over smaller and smaller, what are called diminishing returns. That's a necessary outcome of any type of closed system. The whole in an open system is non-zero sum. The assumption is that in an open system, because in an open system, you're not dealing with just the present, you're dealing with the past and the future. The future is actually potential where creativity exists and discoveries that haven't been made yet, which is the cause of our ignorance, exist in the future. The reason why we have limits is because we have yet to make discoveries that the future will be made in the future. So in that sense, anybody who would imagine what the population life expectancy or what we could support in Vancouver in 1870 was, and compare it to today, it's a very different number because we made discoveries in electricity and a whole bunch of things, water, water management systems, other things that allowed us to have more people with higher productivity systems that could sustain more people at a higher quality of life than we could if we were a century or a half ago. Now, some people today want to return back to the idea of the technology that we had available in the medieval ages, windmills being the thing that was good. It was good for us in the 16th century. But for today to go back and say we need windmills is a bit of a weird thing to do when the ability to produce for society is going to be contracted to the point of the sort of things that we were expecting to see in the production powers of the medieval ages. So human beings live in non-zero-sum systems when we're in an open system. We're always looking for creating more energy than we're consuming. We're looking for leaping outside of the limits of growth by encouraging new discoveries, new inventions, new technologies that improve the quality of life. The limits to growth are thus relative, not absolute. There will always be limits to growth, but there will be relative to the discoveries we have not made. If you're thinking politically or economically, the focus is thus win-win cooperation. You're not fighting for scraps, you're not fighting for diminishing oil or wood or something like that. You're always trying to find points of cooperation with countries who might even be physically weaker than you, knowing that if you benefit them and create a market for them, then that will be better business for you. It'll be in your benefit to have countries around your neighborhood who like and admire you for having helped them develop or eliminate poverty. Whereas they'll feel resentment and want to destroy you if you've screwed with them, killed their leaders, right? Conducted economic terrorism on their people. That will make you actually less secure. That's a lesson that Washington geopoliticians they don't want to learn that. And thus, as far as the political expression of that, it would be a multipolar instead of a unipolar type of system. A unipolar system is basically, and I mean, people have a general idea of a unipolar system, right? Yeah, what would unipolar mean for people here as a system? How would you describe unipolar?
One king.
One king, one ring to rule them all, right? Yeah, so one executive branch imposing its will onto the whole system that must fall into place according to the whimsy of whatever. The emperor, the Roman Empire, whatever it was. A multipolar system is one where you agree to have sovereign decision-making centers that can coexist with different cultural matrices, different values, different skin colors without feeling like you have to destroy them because they're different. But you're looking at our humanity first and making business, economic, trade, whatever agreements, diplomacy based upon considerations of what we have in common. So you want to have more decision-making centers in such a paradigm. The closed system is just the opposite of that. So everything I just said that sounds sane, it's the opposite. And unfortunately, we have a clash of these two different general paradigms around which people use terms like the word sustainability means something very different in Canada than it does in India or China, right? Where there you have more coal-fired power plants being brought online because it's generally understood that carbon dioxide is food for green things. Like plants love eating carbon dioxide. And even if you're a farmer, you have greenhouses, you guys know it's customary to buy a greenhouse, a CO2 machine that it increases the parts per million of CO2 up to 1,400 parts per million. Now that's the reason why that's done, that farmers have to do that if they have greenhouses, is because it's been discovered that the plants, the food, the vegetables grow faster, more vitamin rich, are happier in high carbon environments. Now that doesn't mean that we necessarily want the whole world to have 1,400 parts per million. That's not what I'm saying. But the idea that there's a reciprocal relationship between the organisms that breathe out carbon dioxide, that are given back oxygen, that also when you burn things, you produce that same sort of reciprocal relationship where plant life and trees like you more. That's a good thing. So it's a very different idea from what you see coming out of the Davos World Economic Forum crowd that wants to do climate lockdowns to decarbonize the world, in an absurd idea that somehow that'll make climate wars disappear, because now all of a sudden wars, we're told, are caused by climate change, which is caused by SUVs. Or if we eat bugs, all of a sudden we're going to make the climate better. There's these weird backflips of logic that we're all being given from very sociopathic operatives within places like the Bilderberg Group, Davos, that are trying to convince us of these absurdities. But again, when you look at the word, when you look at the word sustainable, whether it's in Russia, India, China, you actually have an idea that no, we have to create sustained development. There's nuclear power being developed of every single grade, third, fourth generation nuclear. The first molten salt thorium reactors being built up right now in the Gobi Desert. You have fast breeder reactors that produce more fuel than they consume. That's already being developed by India. That also has one of the biggest thorium deposits that the West has been preventing India from developing for decades and decades and decades. Russia is helping with that process as well. You've got the biggest desert reclamation. You know, if you want to be green, you should green deserts, like we were doing in the 50s and 60s. John F. Kennedy was fighting to green deserts. That was happening on the continent. We lost that. In China right now, they've increased 10% of the biomass, and they're greening big chunks of the Gobi Desert. Same thing for India. You've got the biggest water desalination, water diversion projects that's taking the desert and making it bloom. Very different from what we're doing. That's a real way to be green, and they're offering it to Africa, where Africa as well into the Sudan is doing similar things. So you got different same words, different concepts, and it's difficult for people who are not accustomed to looking at what are the contextual dynamics shaping the words we use to navigate through the misinformation that we're being given by our MK Ultra, CIA, Mockingbird media. And a lot of those things that came out publicly in the Church Committee hearings in 1975, everyone knows what Project Mockingbird is. Yeah? Who doesn't know what Project Mockingbird is?
I've heard of it, but I don't remember the details.
Okay. Well, that was essentially the revelation or the name that was given to the project for the CIA and MI6, sponsoring all the print and news media throughout the entirety of the Cold War. Walter Cronkite, all of the
Washington Post.
the Washington
New York
Post,
Times.
New York Times,
Is
everything.
Hollywood part of it?
Yes, Hollywood early on became there was a fight in Hollywood from patriots like John Frankenheimer, Frank Capra, who fought against this imperial takeover within Hollywood. So you'll find that in the 40s, 50s, 60s, there's some really powerful messages in Hollywood films. 7 Days in May, The Manchurian Candidate, watch those. State of the Union with Spencer Tracy, or there's a lot. Executive Action with Burt Lancaster. That's a movie that actually takes on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and this movie was made in 1974. But they actually expose these Hollywood executives who were part of the patriotic resistance. Were actually exposing exactly the depopulation agenda behind the operatives who were sent to kill Kennedy. It's all in the movie. So there's two Hollywoods for a long time. I'd say today I don't see too many examples of a non-CIA Hollywood script. There's maybe a couple of outliers, but generally, yeah. What was that?
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom is a great fight back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Science.
Was that? So that's Project Mockingbird. That didn't disappear when it went public. Neither did MK Ultra. Neither did a lot of these other CIA operations. So we have to be very, very aware of our history, aware of the different techniques of analyzing geopolitics. You okay?
Just wanna-
Oh, it's loud. It's okay. I mean, so Cynthia and I, and we want this to be a bit more interactive, so we didn't really prepare too many formal remarks. But what we did do, we've been working, like I mentioned, with the filmmaker Jason Dahl, and we've produced a series, or we're producing a series of films on breaking free of anti-China psyops. It's a special report that we published this year. It's going to be in the Japanese market this month, actually. That's pretty cool. So the first video tackles the narrative that's being put out of Chinese police stations all over the world. Is it true or is it false? We're being told it's true, but is it? What's the evidence say? So we take that down. The second one is on Russiagate, and specifically, who was behind Russiagate in the first place? Why have conservatives been psychologically targeted? Or no, sorry, left-wing liberals. Why have they been psychologically targeted to believe that the Russians have taken over America in 2016? How did that happen? Well, this film goes through the hand of British intelligence, specifically MI6. That was also behind 9/11. That was behind the war in Iraq. It was the same operatives who were active in pushing the Dodgy dossier in 2016. And now today we just finished the third video. The third video is about 25 minutes. The first two were 9 minutes. And since only half of you have seen it, I'm thinking maybe we'd want to watch both the last one of 9 minutes and the new one that was just finished last night. Nobody in the world has seen this video yet. So we're definitely gonna do the new one, but who would like to watch the 9 minute one? Yeah, we're okay with that? Okay, so let's do that.